Hello, everyone. In this video, I'm fortunate enough to sit down with, in my opinion, one of the greatest cinematographers alive. I can't believe I'm so fortunate. The amazing Drew Daniels. Drew is the cinematographer behind films such as Waves, It Comes at Night, Krisha, Red Rocket, and most recently, Anora. As you can see, he has a beautiful view behind him, and I have my Christmas tree poking in here. But we're feeling festive. Drew, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me here.
Dude, it's such a pleasure. I mean, you have one of the biggest films in the world right now, so I thought I'd come and help you out a little bit by giving you an interview, man. I mean, first things first. What's this period like for you? When a film goes out into the world, do you think about it? When you're on set and you're up against it, and what's this period? Or have you gotten used to it now? How do you feel right now at this period?
I mean, I feel so fortunate for one. I mean, for me, this film truly feels like I feel like I put my signature on this film, like me and Sean together, and like he trusted me and let me do my thing and bring my personality and my taste and all the things that have influenced me are all present in this film. So the fact that it's out there and it's doing so well just feels great, man. It feels like I'm doing something right. And it's a multi-layered answer because you know when we were shooting this film, I have to say, like, we wanted this film to go to Cannes. Like,
Really, was that the idea? That was kind of the general.
yeah, I mean, it's always like for me, for Sean, for me, like, because Red Rocket had gone to Cannes. Like, Cannes was our goal. Like, it was really it just feels like the best festival in the world, the hardest audience in the world, like the true test of your film is putting it in front of the French audience on the Poisette,
Yeah.
in Cannes. It just feels like the ultimate filmmaker, um, like the ultimate path for your film, and for
Wow.
us for it to succeed there and for it to be accepted there and it was like our ultimate goal, and to have achieved it is just like it's truly I don't know, it's a dream come true.
And did you know it would end up being this? Because I'm sure when you're on a set, you're always thinking, "Oh, I hope this goes to Cannes, or I hope this film does well." Was there sort of a general idea? Could you feel it? You've worked with Sean before, you kind of knew it, but did you know it would be received kind of to this level, or is it all still a bit kind of crazy to you? Or do you not even think about that when you're making it?
I mean, you do and you don't. I gotta say,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of, it's in the back of your mind,
yeah.
like as the film, as we're halfway through photography, I was definitely thinking like, man, this is like this film really has, it's really good. Like, we know we're making something really good, and it was
Yeah.
obvious. Um, And I would ride to set with the producer every day, and we would just kind of joke and like try to like knock on wood and be like, "Hey man, like this I think this film has like a very European vibe. Like, I feel like the French are gonna dig it. I feel like it could go to Cannes. It could have legs. It could win Cannes. It was something we would always like kind of have in the back of our mind.
Yeah.
Um, but like when you're on the set framing a shot or something, you're not really thinking about any of that stuff. It's more like
You're like, this
reflection,
is the
you
shot
know?
that's gonna win the palm of the door. I can see it
No, yeah,
already.
definitely not. But there's definitely some reflection, to and from set and those drives where you're just like, we're doing something really good. And I think the crew felt it. Um, I think the actors felt it, and I felt it, the producers. I'm not sure if Sean did. I think Sean is I don't want to speak for him, but he doesn't have he definitely was like not as confident in that way, like, and I
Yeah,
think it's good. I don't think a director should be. I think a director should just be making the film that they want to make, but
yeah.
like secretly behind the scenes we're all talking like, oh, this is going really well. This is
That's
good. This
amazing.
is really good.
And And it's so funny because I was talking to Alex Coco a few weeks ago, who of course produced the film, and he was saying like it actually went like I mean he was telling me about some of the hardships he faced on set and like there were some of the problems, but like all things considered, it sounded I don't want to say easy because that seems like a broad word, but it wasn't as hard as maybe some of the other shoots you've endured. I wonder what was it like for you, because obviously you've worked with people like Trey Edward Schultz, but you've worked with Sean before in Red Rocket, and you've worked on what was this shoot like for you, I suppose, in relative to your other experience? Would you say it was harder, or was it blood, sweat, and tears, or did you kind of were you like, this is actually not too bad? What was that experience like for you?
I would say it was very hard.
Really?
And
Yeah.
it was blood, sweat, and tears in a different way than Red Rocket. Red Rocket was like physically hard
Yeah.
and exhausting and sweaty and uncomfortable. And you're in these locations that are kind of grimy and you're getting bit by mosquitoes all day, you're sweaty, you're just like it's COVID, it was miserable. And you're doing a lot of the work that three people should be doing because I was also setting up the camera, the tripod, moving camera stuff,
Yeah.
helping with lighting, helping load the truck at the end of the day. It was it definitely was a small film. This was also a small film, but I would say it was harder in different ways. It was harder for me. It was harder on my family. I was gone for 3 months and
Wow.
didn't come
Yeah.
home for 3 months, and I had a new baby, and I think for me and my wife, it was just very hard. There were
Yeah.
some nights where it was like, man, are we gonna make it through this? Like,
Really? Wow.
yeah, seriously, it was really tough. And then also just it was we had a lovely crew, but like it's tough also just being the leader of a crew and in a way cheerleading everybody and keeping the morale up, because you're
Yeah.
in on sometimes you're just on the streets in New York in the winter, it's cold, and you don't have those amenities that you have on normal film sets with like heaters and tents.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was just a true indie film in every sense. So um and then also there's just like the constant feeling that the film could fall apart. I'm not sure if Coco got into any of that,
Yeah.
but like every day it felt like it might not happen. It might just break. It might
Yeah.
fall apart. Like someone might not show up.
People falling
Might get
asleep, people sleeping
yeah.
in and stuff.
Oh yeah, there was one day where our camera truck didn't show up, or one of our PAs. I won't name him, but just didn't wake up. And this was like day 3 or something, and we're like, well, we don't have a camera. I guess we're just gonna have to wait until, and like people were calling him, and it was that was the least of our worries. I'll put it that way,
I need
though.
to get
I
all
mean,
sides of the story. He'll be on the channel next, everyone. We're gonna get it from him. We're gonna
I'll never tell you who it was. He's a sweetheart.
amazing.
Um, and also our PAs were like the most dedicated PAs I've ever seen on a film set. They're
Yeah,
like the type of PAs where they're there because they love cinema. They want to work with Sean Baker. They want to be part of something special. And every single one of them is going to be a DP or a producer or a director or a design. You could feel it. Every one of
yeah.
them had ambitions and were talented, and I could see them all succeeding because they just had so much passion, So a lot of the crew had that passion, but
And
it was still hard. I mean, it was hard for everybody. Hard for the art department. I mean, Stephen Phelps, I would see him in the morning and he looked like I don't know if you've seen that meme of like the grip that's like a grip and his hair's all fried and his eyeballs are sticking
he's like
out and it's like
disheveled.
bloodshot eyes and cigarette. Like that's how Stephen Phelps looked every day because I just felt like the guy was sleeping 2 hours a night and and he was there when we finished and he was there before we were setting up, and I people put everything, they put their heart and souls into this film,
Wow.
and that's hard. That takes a lot out of you, but it really shows.
Wow. So that's amazing. And so then working with Sean, I mean, does Sean kind of keep a similar crew on his projects? Was it kind of the same crew you were working with at Red Rocket, or were there kind of new faces around? Or
Well, we had the same first AC and the same gaffer from Red Rocket,
oh, okay,
and then same Samantha Kwan and Coco. They're from Red Rocket. I think that's it. Because also we're shooting in New York, you can't bring everyone in.
yeah,
That's just when you're a small film like that anyway. It's just we were already bringing in a couple people, and it just felt, it just felt like too much to bring every single person. But yeah, Sean, I think I find Sean to be very loyal and um yeah, like for instance, bringing our first AC, he didn't have to do that. There's plenty of first ACs in New York. Same with our gaffer. Um, the fact that he was on board and really wanting to bring them along and keep them from the first film and have that continuity, like I really appreciate that. And also, of course, bringing me on.
You
Um,
were happy. You were, yeah, you were.
yeah, and like I appreciate that because some of my favorite film duos are like director DP duos, you know,
Yeah,
um through like cinema history, like some of the like Paul Thomas Anderson and Bob Elswit, you know, and Scorsese and Chapman and like just a
yeah,
couple of those duos. I feel like they made some of their best films when they did like three or four films back to back.
yeah. Uh,
And and I just love that. I want to be like part of that with Trey, with Sean, with maybe other directors, it's just to me like those are the relationships that are meaningful and the collaborations that I remember and that mean something to me. And so I really admire Sean for wanting to do that.
oh, totally. And then you look at people like Vim Vendors and Rob Muller,
Oh,
like those people.
exactly. I can't believe I didn't mention that one. That's one of my favorite ones. And
For
like,
me, the two of them, like that's like when they were together, it was just, you know. But that's fascinating. And I mean, Sean, I know his way of work. I was talking a bit about Alex about kind of how he works, and it sounded like it made like is it an adaptation for you as a DP when it goes director from director? Like, will you find some directors like the storyboard, some directors prefer to scale, some even will want you to come to rehearsal, some don't. So what's it like? What's that feeling out process like for you with a director? With Sean, I'm sure for Anora, it was kind of like, you know him, you flow with him, you know what he likes, what he doesn't like, or are you still constantly figuring each other out?
I think I'm constantly trying to figure out directors.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ah,
Even on Anora, I was like still like mining Sean for like key words, key ideas, concepts that I could, sink my teeth into. And I don't really need a lot. Sometimes I'll just need one word. And for Anora, I didn't want to just ask like, "Hey Sean, what's this film about?" But like finally I kind of did. We were in the van one day scouting. I was like, "Hey, so Sean," and I don't know how I worded it, but it was trying not to just be so overt and obvious with
yeah,
it. But I ended up getting out of him that in his mind the film was about power. And I really tried to think I really tried to run with that and use that as it was one of the concepts in guiding the visuals, and
yeah,
along with just ideas that we had talked about along the way and specifics, but like just as an overall concept, I think it's always good to have a strong one. And power just felt like, oh man, the ultimate
yeah,
concept. Like if you can just distill the film down into one concept, which I don't think you can
yeah,
a- actually, but like I like that as a theme that I could explore with the camera. And then sometimes, we do the opposite of what you might normally do because, like, there's all this camera language around power that you learn in film school, like low angles and
yeah,
high angles and like who gets a close up and are we over this person's shoulder or are we clean on this person and does the camera move with this person or are we still and panning and just observing them, like who motivates the camera movement and who doesn't,
yeah,
you know what I mean, like those kind of things. And the film being like a power struggle constantly was a fun sort of way
yeah,
to play with camera movement and camera language and how it could change throughout the film and how we could all sometimes do the opposite. Like I remember there's one example of when Annie's on the couch and they're knocking at the door and then they come in the door and she stands up and she's like, "Who the fuck is that? Who's at the door? Blah blah blah. Like, what's going on? What's going on?" And it's like this low angle close up of her, but it's a low angle close up of her in this moment where everything is falling apart and literally she like her entire fairy tale
yeah,
existence is about to get pulled out from under her, but to like show her in that low angle close up just felt like a fun way to do that, you know.
Wow.
I
And
mean, there's many examples of it, but like that's just one random one. But I tend to like opposites and like putting opposite ingredients together and
wow.
forming the visual language, you know? So yeah, so like I feel like when you put things that are quite opposite or conflicting together, they make something really fresh and interesting, you know?
It's interesting to hear you articulate that because I feel like one of the reasons I love that's why I love your work. So hearing you kind of talk about that is fascinating because when I look at your films, whether it's how the aspect ratios are kind of changing in something like Waves or It Comes at Night, or it does seem like I don't know if you have a style per se. It feels like your style, if you is constantly adapting with the films you make. Do you feel like you have a style as a cinematographer?
No, I mean a little bit.
You
I think
have
I
to. I
think
mean, you have to on one hand, like
I think on one hand you can't not have
yeah,
a style or a point of view, and maybe like maybe they're kind of similar, you know, like and it's informed by everything. It's informed by where you grew up, your parents, how you grew up, your the first film you saw that inspired you, like your favorite films, your favorite cinema. All those things are just layers and layers upon things that just influence your style. And but I really think personality is like the most prevalent thing and the most
wow,
important. The more, yeah, you can't really separate your personality from the images you create. I just think that, like you know, for instance, like Anora is funny and like the like sort of raunchy sense of humor behind some of the images or camera movements or um, compositions, you know, all that is just like part of my sense of humor or
wow,
things that I think are funny or things that I think are interesting, you know?
wow,
Like a photographer, like for example, a street photographer. Some of my favorite street photographers are just there's always a little bit of humor in the photos, you know? I just love it. Like there's this little sense of humor and you know it's just like people walking around on the streets for hours for days for months for years and they just photograph the things that they think are interesting, you know, and they're looking
yeah,
for light, they're looking for like something that the image says about humanity or about themselves or about like what they think is interesting or funny. And I don't know, I just think that all of those things inform your style and but it does adapt and it does change depending on the film, of course. Like and I try to be a chameleon and I try not to have too much attention drawn to the image.
yeah,
Um but there's definitely some consistencies I think you could find. Like I do like the image to be uh kind of messy, for example. Like that's one thing I think you could probably say about my style. Maybe that's just me creating an excuse for my sloppy work, but I like images that have a roughness to them, you know. I like to feel the camera shake. I like to see it. Sometimes it's okay to see an image go out of focus or like someone go out of frame and come back in
yeah,
or like you're slightly behind in action or um maybe the zoom isn't perfectly smooth because you know on this movie we tried to do some things to kind of disrupt
yeah,
the perfection, you know, we dollied on the floor, we seldomly laid tracks. I dollied right on the carpet even.
yeah. It feels very kind of 70s in that regard for kind of
Yeah, I mean
roots.
I wanted the image to feel like a little bit of a struggle, you know,
Yeah.
like the struggle that we were struggling on set and the struggle that she's feeling as a character, I feel like is all kind of
Oh,
embedded in the image, in the way it's made, in the way it's shot, in the end result, in the graininess of it, the imperfections of the lenses, all that stuff, you know.
wow. And something else I'd love to ask you. I don't even know if you're conscious of this, but something I love about your work is kind of how you depict the environment, how you photograph the environment. In It Comes at Night, most of that film kind of takes place in this forest, but there's this really kind of the way you depict that I thought was really fascinating. And then in something like this, which is obviously the inverse, you see strip clubs, you see this mansion that you can see out the window of. Are you conscious of your environment while you're making the film? And like, what's that relationship like with picking the right environment? Will you be with Sean when he's scouting locations or?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are some that he'll pick. Like for example, he picked the strip club and then
Yeah.
before I had actually seen it.
And is it
But like,
just a
yeah,
matter
we.
of going in and trying to see where's the best place to put the camera, or what's that process like?
I mean, it's well, it's a mixture because you want to block the actors in a way where you'll show the location and has to feel real and motivated. But we definitely we definitely prefer wider shots, wider angle lenses if we can, if it's not too distracting.
Yeah.
But it's one of my favorite things about Sean's films is how much I'd say respect or um, I don't know, just how much he shows the location,
Yeah.
how there is a sense of place in his films that is very tangible and like for example Red Rocket, like I think when you see Red Rocket, you know what it feels like to be in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
town, like how present the refineries are in every shot. We would move the camera like 1 inch to the left and then 1 inch up and then 1 inch we
Wow.
just to frame like a smokestack like through a window in the deep background through the house. Like I mean, we tried our best to include location in every shot so that you have a sense of place and the location is much of a character as the people.
Wow.
And I think we were very excited about showing Brighton Beach in particular, this really interesting place. And we lived there. We all lived there and
Yeah.
walking distance of each other. And we would go to the Russian restaurants and to the bars and just um, walk around and scout and scout and scout and just absorb the place as much as we could. And I think it's almost like a challenge and uh and something that we're very proud of is like how much we can include the location in every shot and really show the place and really take the audience on a journey to interesting places you would never go otherwise. Like
Yeah.
those are my favorite films, ones that take you on a journey and do like a weird subculture or show you a weird part of society you would never see or a weird place you would never see. I just love that about cinema. So I don't know. It's really a fun challenge and something that I just enjoy.
Amazing. And I'd love to ask you, what entices you to a project? Has it changed? Is it directors, or do you ever say like, oh, I'd like to do something in this genre, or I'd like to work with this director or this script? What does it come down to? Or is it kind of, does it depend? Does it come down to kind of a flurry of things?
It's multiple things, but um, I feel like one of the criterias that I try to really obey and listen to is I think that each project needs to scare me a little bit. Like there's got to
Yeah,
be something about it that's scary. Like either I don't know how to do it or it's ambitious or it's something new and different for me or something that I would never have thought that I would have done or
yeah,
it's just or then it's also directors like 100%. Like I want to work with good directors but also scripts. I mean, some scripts just speak to you and sometimes you'll go like a year without reading a decent script and then you get one and you're like, wow, this is
wow,
incredible. And then it just feels like that's what you have to do. um but yeah, I'd say the doing projects that scare you is probably like the biggest. I
that's
think
fascinating.
I
And
think
so,
fear I think facing your fears and challenges is a really good way to make art.
yeah, and I mean that's fascinating because I think you've like you watch your films and the films you've been a part of, and like something like one of the reasons obviously why I think your work is so amazing is because you look at something like Waves, like obviously the aspect ratios and how that feels like all these kind of a mesh of films put into one, and you can certainly see that that's something that I think would be intimidating for any DP to come on to, and then it comes at night, with that aspect ratio kind of widening at the end, and then Anora, which is because what I wanted to ask you was like, are you constantly trying to do kind of inventive things in the medium? But now I realize, could that come from that just you want to do something new, you want to do things that scare you? Is that where that sort of comes from in your work?
Um, I mean, I think maybe that's just me. Like I definitely there's like maybe a little bit of a I don't know, like anti-establishment sort of
Yeah, yeah.
mentality, like that, like a disruptive sort of thing about me. I just like, yeah, I want to like when it comes tonight, let's make this film as dark as it could possibly be. Let's just let's destroy the image. Let's same thing with Anora and some of these in Waves. I mean, Waves we shot the whole film at 3200 ISO on the camera and really just deteriorated the image. But also it's just so rich and lush
Yeah,
and has vibrant and full of life, you know. It's like again like these opposite things, you know. Um, I don't know. I can't really say.
fascinating. It's amazing. Wow.
I
And
think there's a lot of different factors that go into it, but I think it's just the personality, you know? Like I don't want to just I feel like I would be more afraid of just doing something by the book
mm,
and mainstream than I would of like doing, you know, something like opposite, throwing the opposites together
yeah,
or something sort of unexpected or I don't know, abrasive or like there's this for me like Anora just has this sort of like anti-Hollywood like punk rock sort of
mm,
attitude to it. You know, it just feels raw. It just feels like we're doing whatever we want, whenever we want. Anything could happen in this film. You never know where it's gonna go.
wow.
And I like that. And like those are the films that I see and I excite me and keep me keep me wanting to make movies and you know keep I see my peers work and it also is very inspiring and once and challenges me to do better and be more brave, you know.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. And one of the last things I'd love to ask you, just in general about Nora, is when you're making the film, are you kind of conscious of the edit? Do you find yourself thinking about the edit? Because what's fascinating is I read a lot of Sean's interviews and like, some I didn't even notice was like, in the way coverage is, you'll actually kind of hold instead of cutting back, you'll hold on a close up of someone and then so you're always kind of getting a new shot. Are you
Yes.
aware that these things are going to happen while you're shooting it, or does that kind of are you not even thinking about the edit and that's something that Sean deals with?
Oh no 100%
Yeah, really.
on set we're talking about the edit.
Wow. So you were you guys aware of that while you were actually?
Yeah, yeah. And
Wow.
I think well that was sort of the challenge that he posed to me in Red Rocket was like let's do unconventional coverage and let's try to have a new shot. It's always cut to a new shot so that when I what I like about that is well for one it's like it's so anti-Hollywood. It's so opposite of what Hollywood does with just like shot, reverse shot, shot, and
Yeah,
then like
yeah.
close up, and then we'll go back to the two shot, and then we'll go back to the close ups, and it almost feels arbitrary, like the cutting pattern, the shot progression just feels like there's no concept behind it. It just feels like let's just use all the shots, you know, like oh let's use B camera, A camera, blah 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 blah. So we want to do the opposite. We shoot with one camera we try to hold on a shot as long as we can, and then the next shot is a new shot. If we use a two shot, we won't ping pong back to the two shot again. If we
Wow.
use the wide shot, it'll only be once. Um, and these rules are broken. Like there's definitely some moments, especially once you have the ensemble cast, um, and there's like a lot of dialogue and stuff. But overall, that's the idea: is that the scene progression continually moves forward because there are new shots
Wow.
and then those new shots in my opinion just have more meaning, you know, like if
Wow.
we're close on a character there's a it feels like there's a reason for it. If we're holding on them and not seeing the other person it feels like a choice. It feels stronger. It feels more anti-Hollywood. It feels more just artistic, you know. It feels like you're saying something with even just simple coverage. Like there's this very simple scene of them on the bed where she's asking like, "Oh, what do you do?" You know, and maybe that's a good example because I think it starts in a wide and then I believe it cuts to either a two shot or a close up over him to her
Yeah.
and then it goes I think two shot
Yeah.
And then I think it goes onto her close up, and just that's it. And it never cuts back between shots ever. It almost cuts itself around the bed. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a wide, close, two shot single, and then you work your way around the bed to finally looking at him. And I don't know, there's almost like this dorkiness to it that I like, because there's like this geometric sort of cutting pattern, like for example, like I love when a shot cuts from, like, let's say it's a wide shot,
Yeah.
and you cut from a wide shot to the direct opposite wide shot from
Yeah.
180 degrees looking the opposite way, and you're crossing the line, you're doing this or whatever, but like it doesn't matter, because you understand it, you understand the geography of where everybody is. Um and I just love seeing a space in a wide shot and then cutting to the reverse of
And of
that wide
course, there's
shot.
the rule that like you're not allowed to it. Like that's one of the rules. And obviously, part of your approach and part of the film is to,
Yeah. But
wow,
also, it just like I just love the geometry of like
yeah,
showing a room and the lines of the room and the space and the light, and then cutting to the 180-degree opposite. And you see those opposite lines and reveal the space in a new way from the other angle. And I just love that. And I can't remember. There must be times where we do that in Anora, but there's just just to sum up your question, like we 100% talk about
that's
editing
amazing.
every single day, every single shot. I like to know how we're going to get into a scene. If we can live in this shot, for how long we can live in it, then what we'll cut to. Like, it's a conversation. We actually probably spend more time talking about that than talking about um I don't know, almost anything else. I mean,
Wow,
it's so important to both of us. So,
amazing.
and I love editing, and I kind of started in film school more as an editor. So, um,
Oh, really? So you would kind of, oh, well, that probably explains part of it. You kind of have an understanding of it.
I think you have to. I think if you're don't have an understanding or like an editing brain,
Yeah.
then how can you shoot something? It just feels like it has to cut. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and I've been told by editors, like, they love cutting my the stuff that I shoot, because it feels like it cuts well. You know what I mean? Like, it
Wow.
has. And sometimes the cut well might mean like an abrasive cut, or it might mean a jarring cut. But I like that. I think there's times for that. And there's times for that in Anora. There's a lot of jarring hard cuts, and even that's something we talk about.
Fascinating. Oh, sorry, my second last question. I promise. I'm learning so much. I'd love to ask you, do you storyboard or do you prefer to storyboard or does Sean like storyboard? Have you storyboarded with Trey or how do you feel about storyboards?
I don't storyboard
Really?
with Trey or Sean.
Wow.
I have storyboarded, and it's an interesting process to go through, because you are thinking about everything. You're thinking about the cut. I mean,
Yeah.
storyboarding gets you thinking about editing more than anything, because you're actually seeing how images will juxtapose against each other. And it's a fun process, but like, I don't know, like I feel like I have enough imagination where I can imagine it, and I don't and a lot of the directors I work with too, like, they're very visual, and um we tend to like not want to lock ourselves in. It's like, even if I do have a shot list, sometimes I don't want everybody to see it, because I want us to not have any sort of limits or
Yeah.
expectations of what we're gonna shoot. Um, it's kind of, the shot list is kind of a precious thing, and I've seen it go both ways. I've been on sets where everybody gets the shot list and blah, and but then everybody's like, well, why aren't you doing the blah 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 on the shot list? I'm like, well, it's just a shot list. I think you're taking it too literally. Maybe we should stop giving people the shot list. um
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, so, and like sometimes with Trey, I mean, with Trey we do have a very detailed shot list. With Sean on this one, we only had a very little shot list for the home invasion scene. I
Yeah.
think Sean would go home at night and he would do the work, and he would come to set with like a list. But I think we would rarely like look at it or stick to it. We kind of approach each scene in like a new way and like contextual way, like based on like the stuff that we had shot and like how it's going to fit in with the feeling of the scene each day. And I don't know, I really I like just doing it on the spot and as much as I like the prep process of shot listing and storyboarding and whatnot too, that it really just it kind of depends. And it depends if you have enough time for one. It depends if the director is visual and can sit down with you and like and come up with ideas and shots. And sometimes you need to do that as part of the sort of um, process that we were talking about earlier of like getting into a director's head. Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to do that. You have to go through that process to understand like how they're seeing the film and what the tone of the film is, what the sort of cutting style is, what it is. Yeah.
Wow.
I really like I believe his name is Tom Richmond. He calls it instead of director of photography, he calls it detective of photography. Because you're like you're piecing it together. You're with the director. You're sort of trying to
Yeah.
understand them, and you're listening, and you're watching them, and you're seeing how they respond to certain things. Or, I like watching films with directors for one, and
Wow.
um, and just seeing how they respond to certain images or films or whatever. Like I remember with Sean, we watched we really for Anora, it was like the taking of Pelham 123,
Wow.
shot by Owen Roisman, was like a really big. We saw that and we're like, man, that has like a really good look for New York. It's just like that's the kind of New York that I see in movies and that inspired us. In French Connection, like that
Yeah.
dirty,
Oh, grimy and just you can smell it. You
that
can
brown
almost
and
smell it.
gray. Yeah, it's that brown and gray New York. Like I really was responding to that. And then with Red Rocket, it was Sugarland Express. Just had this awesome look and vibe and playfulness and camera movement that we just responded to like big time. So um, yeah, it's always the detective work of figuring out, getting into a director's head, and sometimes once you're in their head then you don't then the shot list just kind of goes away and everything you're just you understand what they're going for and you understand them, so when you see a scene, like these ideas just kind of come to you fresh because you've done that work and you understand that person and you understand the film and everybody's on that same page.
That's terrific. And sure, my last and final question before I let you go. Well, I'm so sorry for taking up so much of your time. I'd love to ask you, what advice would you have for anyone looking to become a cinematographer?
Oof, that's a tough one. um I would say the biggest thing is just to trust your gut you
Yeah,
know yeah, that's like every day I'm faced with those decisions that ultimately are gut decisions about I think sometimes you trust your gut the most when you realize something is not right, and being able to like just sometimes, for instance, bring everything to a halt and change the course of what is being set up, or for example, if you maybe blocked a scene with the actors and you realize that that's not right, or it could be better, or it doesn't feel right for the scene, like sometimes it's hard to raise your hand and just be like, hey man, I think we need to keep blocking this and really figure it out, because sometimes people just want to block it and just get on with it
yeah,
and start setting up something. But I think sometimes you have to trust your gut and know if something's not right or could be better or whatever it might be, whatever that inner voice is telling you, and you have to follow it. And I think you have to follow it decisively and quickly.
yeah,
Because if you have that lingering feeling that something is not quite there, then it'll just keep biting at you, and you'll find out in the end that, man, you were right and you should have said something earlier, and now you've wasted time because you didn't listen to that. I think that's a
wow, yeah,
it's a good thing to that I try to tell people, because um it's a very practical thing that happens a lot, you know. So
100%. Wow, sir, before we finish up, are you on social media, Instagram, Twitter, anywhere like that?
yeah, my Instagram is just my name. It's Drew Allen Daniels, Alan.
Amazing. And if
Um, yeah, people can
is
follow me if they want.
is there anything you can promote? Any people should go check out? Anora is probably the big one. Everyone go watch Anora. I think it's still in. Is it still in theaters?
It's still in theaters, yeah. Honestly, watch Anora, watch The Brutalist, watch Queer. There's so many good films. The Nickel Boys.
Yeah.
Uh, there's just fantastic films.
Watch every film. Just
What is
go
it, The
watch
Room
every
Next
film.
Door? Almodovar's new movie. I haven't seen that one yet, but I'm excited
Have
to
you
see
seen
it.
Conclave?
I haven't seen
Oh
Conclave, no.
man, Conclave's pretty good.
No. But honestly, Nickel Boy is like a film that comes around once in a while and just changes cinematography. And I feel like Jomo did that with Nickel Boys. It's crazy. It's like
Wow.
a very profound and experimental and beautiful film.
That's
So
high praise. Wow. Everyone go check that out. And you can go follow me over on Instagram if you like Daniel Fee33. But yeah, go watch Anora. This has been my chat with the amazing, with the absolutely, absolutely amazing. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. It's such a pleasure to have you. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.